is election week. We've had early voting going on this week, and election day is Tuesday. This is your chance, Austinite, Texan, to get out there and have an influence in who represents you, not only for president, but more importantly, in my opinion, your state representative, and you have a chance to vote on several propositions. In fact, about 20 propositions right here in the city of Austin. Now here's the Dr. Love take on voting and politics. The more local the race, the more influence you have in that election, and the more that election matters to your daily life. Let me give you an example. This year, we have a presidential election. There's also a Senate election. It's Ted Cruz versus Paul Sadler and Jay Myers, who's the Libertarian candidate in that race. So that's your U.S. Senate race. And there's a House race every year. Who's going to be a representative in Congress in Washington. And then you have races for the Texas State House, the Texas State Senate. And then you have propositions in Austin. One proposition that student council voted on just last night right here at the University of Texas was Proposition 1. And this proposition would basically increase property taxes to create funding to create a medical school in Austin. So those are examples of different levels that you can vote at. You can vote at the presidency level, and then you can vote at representative government at either the federal level of House and Senate, and then you got the state level of House and Senate, and then you got the local level, the city. What's our city going to do? How are our city officials going to be elected, for example? Really, what the city of Austin, what the government of the city of Austin does, has much bigger impact on your life than what the federal government does. Think about it. What are some things that the federal government does that has influenced your daily life over the last couple years? I would wager very, very little. Now, what has city government done that has influenced your life over the last several years? Many, many things. For example, this is coming. They approved the F1 racetrack. I disagree with that. I don't think government should support business. If business is good enough, it'll outcompete everybody else and it'll flourish. But we're taking tax dollars and giving it to an F1, a Formula One racetrack, and that's going to be put in the city. So you're going to see that in a little while. You're going to see major differences in the city once that track moves in. One thing the city does that I disagree with, that many of Austinites disagree with, and I think the latest poll shows almost 52%, or excuse me, 48% disagree with this, is water fluoridation. The city adds fluorosilicic acid to our drinking water. Now that's a city policy that I think should end because of the health effects of it. It's very dangerous to people, especially infants, children, minorities, and women with thyroid disease, hypothyroidism. Fluoride's very dangerous to them. So these are things that happen at the local level. Another thing is just laws that govern the police. The city government has had influence over rules of videotaping police. A local peace activist, Antonio Beeler, spelled Buehler, he is a West Point graduate from the United States Military Academy, and he also went to Stanford Business School after serving in the military. So he's a veteran, and Stanford is one of the top business schools in the country. So he's very intelligent. And he was arrested on New Year's Eve for taking pictures of a police officer who was being very, very rough with a woman at a traffic stop at a gas station. And since that time, Antonio Beeler has started a group called Peaceful Streets Project, and the purpose of this group is to film police while they're on the streets to basically hold them accountable. Make sure that they are doing things that are legal, that are constitutional, that they're not stepping all over your rights, and to get video evidence of that, because that is the only way really to hold police accountable. In court, it is your word versus theirs, and I know this firsthand. When I was in court, and they said, what were you? They said, officer, what was he doing to make you think that he was drunk? And he said basically that I smelled like alcohol and that I was having trouble with logic and that I was walking funny. You can't provide any proof of that. That's just his word. And then I went up there and I had to say, listen, If I was drunk, why didn't he breathalyze me? If I'm drunk, why don't you collect physical evidence? And then I had a water bottle on me, and according to his testimony, he didn't look at it. So let's say I look like I'm drunk, and I'm at the football game, and you see a plastic bottle filled with a liquid in it, and you think this person's drunk. Are you going to check that plastic bottle to see if there's water in it or see if that's vodka or something? Of course you would. If it's vodka in there, you'd be like, wow, this guy's carrying a lot of alcohol on him, and he's probably drunk right now, and he might be a danger to himself or others. You might think that if you think, that you become a danger to yourself or others when you drink. Not this officer. He finds this bottle of water on me. It was water, but, if you're going to assume that I'm drunk to the point where I might harm myself or others, you might check it just to see if there's some alcohol in there. So you didn't even bother checking this clear liquid bottle to see if I had alcohol in there. This police officer did no work to show that I was drunk. He just said that I was drunk, and his evidence for the jury was that I kind of stumbled backwards as he was like walking at me, yelling at me, and he did yell at me. He claimed in court that he didn't. He really perjured himself, which was sad to see. It upsets me when police officers aren't honest. And so Antonio Beeler has experienced dishonesty from police officers. The one person claimed that he spit on him, and that's why he arrested him. This, mind you, after they gave him a breathalyzer, hoping that they would find that he had alcohol in his system so they could arrest him for being drunk in public or driving under the influence. He wasn't drunk, so they said, oh, well, he spit on me, and there's no evidence of that. And now Antonio Beeler faces felony charges for that. But this is an example of something that's happening in Austin where city government's involved. How is city government involved in the filming of police? Well, they decide how close you can stand to police officers. That's something the city decided. So if you see something interesting going on with the police and you want to see what's going on, either because you're curious or you want to make sure that the police aren't doing anything that's outside their jurisdiction or outside their legal authority, or if you want to be there just to watch in case this person does something to the police, so you can testify against them in court and say this person assaulted the police. That's perfectly reasonable reason to want to watch what goes on. Maybe you want to film it because you want to just have everything on record. Make sure, look, the film will speak for itself. I don't need to testify. Reasonable things. Great things to do is to film police interactions with other citizens. Now the city council has decided how close you can stand to them. So this definitely affects you, and affects the hundreds of people in the Peaceful Streets Project that go around the city of Austin and film police interactions. In fact, there's an article in the Daily Texan Monday this week that said that the Peaceful Streets Project will be in West Campus filming police interactions. It might have been Friday when this article was, but that the Peaceful Streets Project was going to be in West Campus to make sure they were conducting themselves appropriately. So things the city government does has tremendous impact in what's going on. It's important to vote for the President of the United States, of course. It's important to vote for your congressman in Washington. It's important to vote for your senator. It's important to vote for your state rep. Very important. Also your state senator. And what's going to have the greatest impact in your life in your daily life, is who is serving you at a local level, being the city council, and what city ordinances and propositions are passed. So, for example, there are about 20 different propositions that you, as an Austinite, are going to vote on, assuming that you vote in this election. 20 different propositions. I knew about 4 of them, and I think I'm more informed than most voters. Not all voters, but most. And I only knew about 4 of them before I went in. Thank goodness some student groups were handing out some literature. And to be honest, when you read the propositions, it's not very helpful. They're confusing. They're written in legal language, which makes it difficult for people to understand. At least I found it difficult to understand. I can't imagine someone who's maybe 18 or someone who either dropped out of high school or is not a proficient reader. I really enjoy reading, and I really enjoy language, and I have trouble reading things that I'm voting on. And so I can only imagine what it's like for someone who does not enjoy reading, someone who does not enjoy language. is not as proficient in language. Someone who speaks English as a second language. What if they don't speak, and I don't know if you can get the ballot in Spanish. Even if you can, what if you don't speak Spanish? What if you speak, let's say, you're from China and you have become a United States citizen? What if you don't speak English that well? You know, there's language on votes, on ballots should be very simple and easy for people to understand so they know what they are voting for. If you are going to vote, I highly recommend that you take a good look at the city propositions that you're going to vote on, because they will have an influence on your life here in Austin. Who the president is over the next 4 years, whether it's Romney, Obama, or Gary Johnson, I think makes a little difference. Unless it's Gary Johnson, in which case it's going to make a huge difference. For those of you who don't know, Gary Johnson is the Libertarian candidate for president. He was running against Obama and Romney, yet he was excluded from the debates. It's not likely that he's going to win because few Americans know about him, but he has policies that most Americans agree with. Specifically, he wants to end the war on drugs. He wants to legalize marijuana, something 50% of Americans want, depending on what poll you check. It's down to 45 in some polls. So legalize marijuana, decrease defense spending, which 32% of Americans want, and he wants to balance the budget, something that most Americans want. He's got a platform that America agrees with, yet he's not allowed in the debates. So if he were elected, assuming he'd do those changes, that would really make a difference. The difference between Obama and Romney I find to be very, very subtle, and it doesn't go much different than their skin color. I think that's the biggest separation between them, that and their party name. Other than that, I think Obama and Romney are pretty much the same regarding policy. Romney wants to expand the military slightly by 17%. Obama says he wants to shrink it, but he's done nothing but grow it since he's been in office. So I don't know how much more Obama's going to grow or shrink the military. And on the economy and taxes, they seem to be slightly different. Romney says, I'm not going to raise taxes at all. And Obama says, Romney, your cure to everything is to lower taxes. But it's really a finger-pointing match, and I don't see them as really being that different. Some people would disagree with me. In fact, many people who are staunch party advocates would say that the other person is very different. But what's interesting is that when I was talking to a member of the College Republicans, I said, how is Romney different from Obama, aside from the economy? And this young woman could not answer me. Now, this was during the primaries, so she might have known Romney a little bit less than now. But I found that very interesting, that Republicans had trouble distinguishing their candidate from the opponent. Now, from my experience, it seems that Republicans are a little bit concerned about debating the issues. Now, it's not just right here on campus, it's also at the presidential level. And there are members of Romney's team or members of his party that have been actively preventing Gary Johnson's inclusion in this election, which makes me curious as to what the Republicans and what Romney is really afraid of. So that's something to consider. You know, why are you afraid of debating a third party about your policy stances? We've seen that here on campus, and the exclusion of Gary Johnson from the debates is evidence of this as well. So consider that. If you're Obama or Romney, why would you not want a third party candidate who has platforms that most Americans agree with? Why would you not want him at the debates? And also think, what difference has the federal government made in your life over the last 4 years? What has Obama specifically done that has personally affected you? And then if you want to keep playing, ask yourself, what has city council, or what has the city of Austin done that has directly affected my life? And compare those two and really get an understanding of how influential the city government and how influential the federal government are in your daily life. For those of you who just joined us, Election Day is Tuesday if you want to exercise your right to vote, and early voting is going on until Friday. So if you'd like to get out and vote, that's your chance to do it. You can vote anywhere you want for early voting, but Election Day, which is Tuesday, you got to vote at your specific precinct if you know where that is. I don't know where mine is. I always have to vote early. So, if you'd like to vote on Election Day, you may want to look up where it is that you vote. And you can vote any precinct between now and Friday. And of course, there's elections going all the way up from local propositions all the way up to the presidency. And we're going to break some of those down when we come back. And don't forget, if you'd like to play along with us, consider the effects that the federal government has had in your daily life over the last 4 years, and what things the local government, the city of Austin, has done that has had an effect in your daily life. I'm the Doctor of Politics, Dr. Love. You are listening to Lone Star Politics right here on KVRX 91.7 Austin. Welcome back to Lone Star Politics right here on KVRX 91.7 Austin. I'm the Doctor of Politics, Dr. Love, and we are in the middle of an election. Not just the presidential election, we got elections going on all levels. We have congressmen and senators being elected that we're going to send to Washington. We have state representatives and state senators that we're electing here in the state of Texas. And we have local propositions right here for the city of Austin that are going to dramatically affect your life. Let's pick those apart. Starting with Proposition 1, which is the tax to build a medical school right here in Austin. Last night, the student government of the University of Texas voted unanimously to support Proposition 1. Why is this important? Because the University of Texas is one of the largest institutions of higher learning in the nation to not have a medical school. Secondly, Austin is one of the biggest cities in the country without a medical school, with a research university. Having a medical school generally aligns with what the University of Texas is trying to do, which is change the world. What starts here changes the world. That's our motto. And the idea that we can expand into biotechnology more than we are now with the medical school, I think is a wonderful thing for the city of Austin and for the University of Texas, and student government agrees. So I believe that is generally the opinion of students, and my hope is that that's the opinion of people in Austin. I know some people in Austin who I'm actually very close to that want limited government, very limited government, are opposed to it because it is an increased property tax. I can understand that, and I personally think that we should pay an increased property tax to have a medical school here because it'll really benefit the city. Projections are that this will create, I think, 15,000 jobs. I mean, imagine you're building a teaching hospital, and then you got, this is really going to expand into the biotechnology industry. Right now, Austin is a very techie city. You got Facebook here. You got Dell that's just out in Round Rock. So Austin is very high tech, and when you add medicine to the city, you're going to get this hybrid of medicine and technology, and I believe you're going to get a lot of innovation. And so this medical school, I believe, will be very good for our economy, good for our citizens, good for our health. I'd really like to see more in preventative medicine, because the best way to be healthy is to be healthy rather than to go to the doctor when you're sick. And Newt Gingrich, when he was in Austin just less than a week ago, he said, I would much rather figure out a way for you to keep you healthy than to cut your medical care. So the best way to decrease costs on government health care is to keep the citizens healthy. And a medical school, I believe, will do that for the city of Austin. So that's Proposition 1. That is one of the more publicized propositions. There's also a big deal about single-member districts. Single-member districts. What is that? In the city of Austin, right now we elect all of our members by the at-large, or they're all at-large members. What does that mean? When you vote in city council, at least that the way it's been, you vote for every city council member, which I believe there's 7 of them. It's not divided up based upon where you live. So, for example, when you vote for a representative for Congress or even the state house, you vote for one spot. That's based upon where you live. You don't vote for congressmen from all 50 states, nor do you vote for congressmen from all over the state of Texas. You vote for them for your district. City council currently does not work that way. You vote for council members from all over the city of Austin, and they are supposed to represent all of Austin. The reality is that only 10% of registered voters vote in city council elections. They primarily are wealthy, white, and live in the downtown area. As a result, city council has been supportive of the interests of the wealthy, white, downtown Austinites. You might think this is a good thing. You also might think that people from all over the city should be equally represented in their interests at city council. If you do believe that people on the east side, people on the south side, people on the north side should be equally represented in city council, as are those who live downtown and in a very tight cluster around city council, there are two propositions going on that address this issue. One of them is Proposition 4, which is the 10-1. Now, Austin is the largest city in the country to not have geographic representation. Now, geographic representation is what I just described, which is where you have representatives from different parts of the city representing different populations. So I live on the east side. My city council representative, assuming 10-1 gets passed, will represent the east side. That will be a different person than who represents downtown. One group that has been instrumental in this has been Austinites for Geographic Representation. And they believe, like most big cities in America, that what you should do is have what I just described, people elected from different parts of the city that represent different parts of the city. So this is Proposition 3. Proposition 3, which is the 10-1 proposition, which basically says, instead of the at-large system, which is what we have now, which is where everybody elects all the city council members, the 10-1 will have it so that 10 city council members will be elected from 10 different regions or districts of the city. So instead of just everybody votes for everybody, it'll be that everybody votes for a specific person who represents their geographic area. This makes it much more effective to hold city council members accountable. For example, you will be able to go to your council member and say, hey, I live in this neighborhood, you represent me, here's my problem, or here's what I want government to do, or here's what I want government to stop doing, or I have an idea to make my neighborhood better or the city better. And you're going to have to listen to me because you represent me, council member. As opposed to right now, you can go to a council member and say, hey, I got this problem. And they'll say, take it to another council member. Or, I'm too busy for this. Take it to somebody else. Or, I don't care. Take it to somebody else. Or, do you know what? I don't have the, quote, bandwidth for this issue. I've actually heard that from city council members where I've said, fluoride is poisoning the citizens of Austin. It's destroying the brains of our babies who drink it in bottled formula. It is destroying the health of minorities who are more susceptible to it. And it's harming women who are developing hypothyroidism. And the response was, I don't have the bandwidth for this issue, which means I'm too busy. They can say that now because I have very little power, because they're elected from the entire city. As opposed to being elected from my neighborhood, you can darn well better believe they're going to listen to me, because if they don't, I can go to my neighborhood and be like, hey, you know our council member? He or she is not listening to the needs of our community. And let's band together and vote somebody else in. That's much easier to do on a neighborhood level than a city level. It's much easier to do at a state level than a federal level. So it's much easier to take political action and influence a state election than a federal election, just like it's much easier to influence a local election than a state election. So that's why Austinites for Geographic Representation, and I as well, believe that the 10-1, which is Proposition 3, will be better for the city. So that's been a huge one. You've probably seen signs all over that say 10-1. That's what that is. That's Proposition 3. And if you would like that, you can vote yes on that. There's also an 8-2 proposition, which I think is Proposition 4. That one's, I believe, has been designed to dilute the 10-1. Instead of having geographic representation, what you do is you have 8 districts, and then I think it's 3 at-large members. So there'll be 3 members who are represented by or elected by everybody, and then 1 mayor elected by the whole city. It's kind of a dumbed down version of geographic representation. So if you like the 10-1, you can vote affirmative or yes on Prop 3, and if you like the 10-1, Prop 4 is the one that you would want to vote against if you want the 10-1. It's kind of confusing because there's these 2 propositions on this idea of changing the way council members are elected. And I believe that it's designed to confuse you. In fact, I spoke with a city council member. I said, how come we have the 10-1 proposition and the 8-2 one and the 8-3 one? He said, because someone's very smart and they want to kill both of them by bringing both of them up. So the great way to keep things the way they are is to dilute both votes. So if you vote for one, you don't vote for the other. It kind of splits that vote of people who want geographic representation. I believe that's the design for it. Very crafty. So those are 2 very big propositions. Prop 1, which is the medical school. If you want the medical school, you can vote yes on that in Austin. And if you want geographic representation, you can vote yes on Prop 3 and no on Prop 1. The reason I'm going through these in detail is because the language is difficult at the polls. I spent a lot of time reading them today. I voted today. For those of you watching on television, you see my I voted sticker. Oh, and if you're watching on television, I'm wearing my Halloween costume, which is this bright pink spandex. It's a whole bodysuit. And I wore this today. I changed in the bathroom right after class and went up to vote with QSA, which is the Queer Student Alliance. And so we were voting. I thought my pink spandex was appropriate to wear as a costume with the Queer Student Alliance. And my professor saw me, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Professor, it's time for me to vote. This is my voting attire." It's also my Halloween costume. So, just wanted to explain that for those of you watching on television. So, I went through the language of the bills very clearly today, and it took me a long time to read. It is a chore to vote with so much to vote on. Not just, we're talking president down to state rep. You got all these houses, and then you got lots of judges you're voting for. So you got all these people theoretically you should have researched, and then you got all the 20 propositions from the city. So there's a lot to learn. I don't know enough about the other propositions to really speak on them. I've heard from those who like small government, and if you listen to my show, I believe the odds are slightly higher than normal that you like small government, that you don't want government involvement. I've heard from some that if you want small government, you vote yes on Prop 3 and no on everything else. If you want the med school, you would have to vote yes on Prop 1. But I've heard if you want small government, voting no on the majority of propositions is a good way to do that. I don't know enough about the propositions to make a recommendation, but definitely do your homework on that. And if you want small government, the no button is very, very helpful in doing that. Aside from Prop 3. Prop 3 will get you very accountable small government if you vote yes on that. So that's what's going on in the local elections. And as I said at the top of the hour, local elections are where you are powerful. You yourself are not going to influence the presidential race. In reality, the state of Texas is going to go Republican. That's how our population breaks down. So you can vote for any candidate you want. You could even vote for Libertarian Gary Johnson, who wants to legalize marijuana, as most Americans do. And you can make a stand with your vote rather than voting for, it doesn't matter who you vote for as far as the president in this state. It only matters really in the swing states, which are Ohio, Michigan, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and New Hampshire. Those are the places where the presidential election really matters, because those ones flip between Republican and Democrat. Where your vote really matters is the city propositions, your state representative, whoever that is, your state senator, and then less so, but still important, are your congressmen and your senators. Now, in Texas, we have a Senate race going on at the federal level. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I find it interesting because this seat has been held by Kay Bailey Hutchinson for a long time, and now it's open, and it was a really big deal, at least amongst the Republican primaries. Ted Cruz is running the Republican Party, and then Paul Sadler, I don't know much about him, but he won the Democratic Party. So it's those two squaring off. And then you have J.J. Myers running for the Libertarian Party. And like Gary Johnson, J.J. Myers wants to legalize marijuana and decrease federal spending. So if those are things you like, you have the Libertarian Party on the ballot for Senate if you don't want to vote for a Republican or a Democrat. I had the good fortune of meeting two people that are very interesting to me and who you've probably heard of. One is an American hero, and one is absolutely loathed and despised by many Americans. Now, who am I talking about? The American hero is John Glenn, senator and astronaut. He came to the LBJ School of Public Affairs yesterday, and he was just awesome. I'll tell you all about him in a minute. And last week, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who ran for the presidency this year on the Republican Party. Newt Gingrich was on campus. He came to the LBJ School, and my goodness, I learned more in an hour with him than I did in a week of school. Newt Gingrich is just phenomenal. I'm not talking about his personal issues. I think he's a terrible husband. I think he's brilliant, and what he said at the LBJ School was very interesting. And I'll tell you, I got to speak with him. I got to ask him a question. I think I asked a brilliant question that he couldn't answer effectively, and he kind of skirted it like a slippery politician. But it was great to get a chance to talk with him and ask him a question. So let's talk about John Glenn. John Glenn is 91 years old. 91. He's in great physical shape. He came to speak to us at the LBJ School, and his mind is just sharp. He is very intelligent, very aware. And if you don't know John Glenn, he served as a senator from Ohio, which is my home state. He served as a senator for 25 years. Before that, he was an astronaut. He was the most famous astronaut. He was the first man to orbit the Earth. And in fact, he was so famous that after he orbited the Earth, Kennedy didn't want him to be an astronaut, to fly anymore, because he was afraid that he would die. If John Glenn had died in space, that would have been the end of the space program, because he was a national hero. In fact, he was a world hero. I heard a story that Dean Hutchins of the LBJ School was traveling with Senator Glenn in Czechoslovakia way back when, and they checked his passport, and they looked at it. They were like, John Glenn? And Senator Glenn's like, yeah. They're like, astronaut John Glenn? And then they tried to get stuff for him to sign. So even people who worked security on trains in Czechoslovakia knew who John Glenn was as far as an astronaut. So he's a true American hero. But really what makes him a hero is his work in the Marine Corps during World War II in Korea. He flew 150 missions almost. I think it was 147 missions, combat missions. And, he served his country. He was in college, and he heard about Pearl Harbor, and he talked to his future wife and said, honey, I got to go. I got to serve my country. I can fly, and I'm going to do it. And she said, do what you need to do. And he talked about how supportive his wife, Annie, has been throughout his career and throughout his life. And when he talks about it, it really seems that they were indeed a collaboration. He wasn't saying, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter what you think. I think they really collaborated, which I think is why they've been together for so many years. I think they've been together 65 years or something like that. Very long time. So John Glenn was just amazing, and he was at the LBJ School, and I asked him, I said, Senator Glenn, you're in tremendous shape for a man of your age. You're good for a man of 70, and you're 91. What can we do to be as healthy as you are at your age? And he was so darn funny. So instead of giving me health recommendations, well, he gave me three. Let me just give those to you real quickly. One was he said good genes. So we can't really control that. He said that's why he's healthy. 2, he said you got to exercise just to clear out your body. I think we all understand that, sweating and getting the blood pumping, getting the heart moving, assuming you're healthy enough to do those things, that this is good for you because it cleanses out your body and gets you moving, and it also increases endorphins, makes you feel good. The third thing he said was you got to have a purpose every day. You got to have a reason for getting out of bed. Now, I've heard many astronauts suffer depression once they come back because they've already reached the highest pinnacle of their career. Going into space is something that very few people get to do. And once they do it, it's like, oh, there's nothing left for me to do, and they get depressed. Senator Glenn has had a purpose to his life, and he said that purpose keeps you healthy because it gives you a reason to live, gives you something to live for, a reason to get out of bed, a reason to work hard. So he's also happily married. So according to Senator Glenn, if you want to be happy, find something you're passionate about and have that be a motivating factor. Work on that every day. Have that be a motivator to get out of bed every day. Now, the best part was that Senator Glenn was absolutely hilarious when I asked him about this. And he said, let me just he's like, I get a bunch of emails, and some of them are pretty darn funny. He said, Senator Glenn's also the oldest person to go into space. I think he was in his 80s or maybe his late 70s, and he went into space. And one of the jokes was, why didn't they let Senator Glenn out of the spacecraft once they landed? And the answer is because they're afraid that he would just wander off, because he was an old man and old people wander off. The other joke was it was about 3 men. 3 old men are standing next to each other, and one guy says, "Windy." The man next to him says, "No, it's Thursday." And the man next to him says, "Yeah, me too. Let's go get a beer." He had everyone at the LBJ school just laughing their tails off. And this was supposed to be kind of a serious policy meeting. And the senator, who's 91 years old, is cracking these old guy jokes. It was wonderful. Now, Newt Gingrich, somebody I don't like and someone I think is absolutely brilliant. Newt Gingrich said some tremendous things at the LBJ school. The most interesting, and I think the most controversial, was that he said, quote, the federal government is structurally incompetent, and that if we want to see any change in the effectiveness of government, the citizens are going to have to rise up and demand change in the way Congress is run. This from a man who served as Speaker of the House. Almost nobody knows more about the Congress than Newt Gingrich. And the fact that he came to a policy school, which is theoretically training future employees of the federal government, him saying government is structurally incompetent, that was just amazing. And I was laughing half the time he was talking because he was being so bold, and I was scribbling notes the other half. I mean, it was just tremendous. Another thing that he pointed out, which I thought was very interesting and made a lot of people uncomfortable, was, and this is PG-13, so if you have children in the car, you might have to do some explaining about this one. He talked about how Democrats are very pro-women's rights in the United States. And he said, but when you go to the Middle East, they get quiet because there are very terrible atrocities going on in the Middle East regarding women's rights. For example, in many Muslim countries, women have to remain covered. They have to cover their faces. The only thing you can see are their eyes. And imagine going around with a sheet over your head and just having room for your eyes all day. It's really, really oppressive. The other thing, we talk about women not being allowed to learn how to read in the Middle East in certain countries, and worst is the genital mutilation that this female circumcision that is perpetrated on women throughout nations in the Middle East. Really very awful. And Democrats in the United States are quick to say Republicans have this war on women and women's health and women's bodies, but where are they with regard to respecting or trying to fight for women's rights in the Middle East? They're not anywhere. Now, I'm not a Republican. I certainly don't support the Republican Party, but I think that's a good point that people say one thing here, but that doesn't translate to other places. Newt Gingrich said we're at a couple, we have 3 major innovations that we're dealing with right now. One is energy with oil and gas, and how we have the world's largest. We are the world's largest natural gas producer. We are now exporting natural gas, so that's going to be part of the major influence in the United States in the future is our natural gas. Second is the biology, the biotechnology breakthroughs that we're dealing with. We will soon be able to grow replacements for our limbs and for our organs. Imagine if you are a heavy drinker, you get cirrhosis of the liver. Imagine being able to take a healthy liver cell, grow another one of your own livers in a petri dish, and then have that inserted into your body. We're not talking organ donation anymore. We're talking your organ, you growing another one of them, and just replacing that in your body. That's where medical science is headed if the government can get out of the way and help us get there. And assuming we have the research to get there. But he said that's a major thing. He also really criticized the FDA. Gingrich said, quote, "The FDA is not designed to deal with modern science. I believe that it is a destructive agency." He said that in front of policy students. It was absolutely amazing. Another great innovation is going to be in brain research. Right now, our brains have more synapses than there are grains of sand in the Sahara Desert. Imagine that. There are so many connections going on in our brain, it's almost impossible to measure. And once we develop the ability to measure that, we're going to make tremendous progress in that. So that's coming up in the future, brain research, the ability to collect data and really make a difference in our understanding of the brain. And the last difference is in wireless technology. He believes that we'll soon keep our healthcare on our phone, all of our healthcare information. You can go to any hospital, just scan information from your phone, and bam, you're right there. So right here on my phone, I can look up more data than the president could in the 1980s. This wireless capability is absolutely phenomenal. And so as we progress, we need to have a government that is amenable to such progress and will actually allow for innovation and promote innovation, even if they can't control it. Because in reality, bureaucracy and government is too inefficient and ineffective to be able to grow as fast as technology changes. So we are close to the end of the show, but I need to get back to really what's going on right now in Austin, and that is the election. Early voting is going on right now. You can do early voting until Friday. Now with early voting, you can vote anywhere around the city, any voting precinct, anywhere you see the big signs that say vote. You can actually vote right here on campus at the Flawn Academic Center, the FAC. That is open until 7 p.m. So that is I voted there today. It is the most convenient to vote early. Now what concerns me about these voting machines is that there's no way to do recounts. People say, oh, well, you just ask the machine for a recount. Well, the machine is going to give you the same number it came up with before. There's no accountability. There's no way to check to see if it's accurate. And there's no way for anyone to really check it or hold the machine accountable. The machine is going to give you a number. This is why I'm an advocate for hand-counted paper ballots, because people can recount those. Those are physical things, and we can be like, okay, that's for this person, that's for this person. You can't do that with the machine. You just kind of got to trust it. And I trust government. I don't trust government for two reasons. One, those in power want to stay in power. Two, I think government's incompetent, and therefore I don't trust their ability to either build or manage a voting machine. So that's two reasons I don't like these voting machines. But that's all we have right now in Texas. So if you want to learn more about hand-counted paper ballots, there are a number of groups around Austin. One of them I think is called Save Our Vote, something of that nature. And they're working to get hand-counted paper ballots. But the important thing is that there are propositions in Austin that are really going to affect you. The presidency, that's going to affect you a little bit, and your vote really isn't going to matter because Texas is going to go Republican either way. But if you vote in the local elections, local propositions, there your vote will really, really matter. So there's Prop 1, which is the property tax to build a medical school right here in Austin. It's projected that'll increase jobs and help make Austin a center for biotechnology, which will be great. So if you'd like a medical school, you can vote yes on Prop 1. And if you'd like geographic representation, meaning if you want to have a city council member who's elected from your neighborhood, from your area, rather than just the city at large, That is Proposition 3. That's the 10-1, where there will be 10 districts, and then you elect one member from your district and an at-large mayor. That is Proposition 3. So if you want the 10-1, you can vote yes on Prop 3 and no on Prop 4. Those are two very important ones. There's also another proposition which student government supports, which would move city council elections to November. So you'd be voting on city council now. This is to increase turnout, because city council turnout for voting right now is abysmal. It's like 10% of registered voters. So if you're interested in voting, the local propositions are really where you get the bang for your buck in this election. Now, if you want my prediction, I think Obama's going to take the presidency. I think he's going to squeak by. But if Romney gets either Ohio or Michigan, it could really be trouble for Obama. Or if he gets Wisconsin and Minnesota, those are two big ones too. So the media says it's close. I don't buy it. I think they're just trying to do it to keep you reading, but we'll see. Either way, I don't see a difference whether it's Obama or Romney elected. They're both the same. They want to increase spending, they want wars, and they want to keep on criminalizing you for smoking marijuana, which most Americans no longer believe. They think marijuana should be legal. So it is a chance to exercise your rights and elect who is going to represent you. And it's a great thing about being Americans is to vote.